The campaign to keep Scotland in the UK has taken the most votes so far in the Scottish independence referendum. That's as counting is continuing across the country. 17 of the 32 constituencies have been counted so far. The no group is up 56% of the votes, and with the yes getting 44%. Well, for the latest, let's go live now to our UK correspondent, Natalie Powell, who is in Edinburgh. Good morning, Natalie, from a wet Edinburgh this morning. Well, it looks like it's been a decisive victory for the no votes, or is it too early to call?
Very much so. It does look like the no's now have it. After the announcement of Edinburgh, which came through just a few moments ago, they voted for no, and that's really now swung it. The yes campaign certainly can't come back from this. In fact, now that Edinburgh has voted no, there's around 70,000 votes in the lead now. We did know around about an hour ago, after Glasgow voted, that it was very likely that the no campaign would be in the lead at this stage, simply because Glasgow's such a big voting area, and although it voted yes, it didn't vote yes with enough of a majority. So behind me, the Scottish Parliament, there's been a lot of people from the yes campaign celebrating most of the night. They've gone very, very quiet, and we've seen a few of them trying to go home now in dribs and drabs. So I think that really sums it up for you.
And the leaders of those who were campaigning for Scotland to break away from the UK, have they pronounced themselves so far, as the results are clearly showing that they've lost?
We're expecting Alex Salmond, the leader of the SNP party, the Scottish National Party, and Scotland's First Minister, to talk in just a few moments' time. We are expecting him to announce defeat at this, and he's obviously going to be incredibly disappointed with this result. It's been a 2-year campaign for him, and of course this has been one of his major forces going forward, winning elections and so on and so forth in Scotland. The Better Together campaign, however, are obviously going to be delighted, although there's going to be a lot of discussions to follow, because obviously the 3 leaders of the UK's largest parties in Westminster have promised, they've written a pledge to give Scotland more devolution if it does indeed vote no, and that's certainly where it's going.
Now, what if that's the agreement that they've had, and they're going to be going that route of devolving more power to Scotland? Just overall, Natalie, what does it actually mean? Would it mean that Scotland will have a say over, let's say, foreign policy issues directly, or over financial issues and trade issues? What would it actually mean for Scotland to have more power devolved to it?
Well, if it had gone independent, it would have had power over foreign policy, immigration, defence, things like that. What more devolution means, however, is that it's going to have power over taxes, funding and welfare. One of the promises by the leaders of the 3 main parties in Westminster is that Scotland will be able to agree to its own funding of the NHS.
Natalie, I need to stop you there. I need to stop you for now. Natalie, we'll continue talking to you a little bit later. Let's take a listen now to Alex Salmond from the Scottish National Party and First Minister of Scotland, who's addressing the media just now.
So we now face the consequences of Scotland's decision. Firstly, Clause 30 of the Edinburgh Agreement is now in operation. On behalf of the Scottish Government, I accept the result, and I pledge to work constructively in the interests of Scotland and the rest of the United Kingdom. Secondly, the Unionist parties made vows late in the campaign to devolve more powers to Scotland. Scotland will expect these to be honoured in rapid course. Just as a reminder, we have been promised a second reading of a Scotland bill by the 27th of March next year, and not just the 1.6 million Scots who voted for independence will demand that that timetable is followed, but all Scots who participated in this referendum will demand that that timetable is followed. I'll be speaking to the Prime Minister shortly after this statement, and I'll have a press conference later today to reflect on that and the full results. But can I return, thirdly, to the empowerment of so many Scots entering the political process for the very first time? It's something that is so valuable, it has to be cherished, preserved and built upon. I've said it a number of times in this campaign that the most moving thing I saw was the queue of people in Dundee 2 or 3 weeks ago, patiently waiting to register to vote, and most of them for the first time ever, deciding to participate in the democratic process. Today in Bury, I met a 61-year-old lady just coming out of the polling station who had never voted before in her life. I met a soldier, a former soldier, who hadn't voted since he'd left the army some 24 years ago. And these people were inspired to enter democratic politics by the thought that they could make a difference in building something better for their country. These are people who all of us, as we campaigned, have met and been inspired by. And all of us are a part of all of that experience that we have encountered. Whatever else we can say about this referendum campaign, we have touched sections of the community who've never before been touched by politics. These sections of the community have touched us and touched the political process. I don't think that will ever be allowed to go back to business as usual in politics again. So friends, sometimes it's best to reflect where we are on a journey. 45%, 1.6 million of our fellow citizens voting for independence. I don't think that any of us, whenever we entered politics, would have thought such a thing to be either credible or possible. I think over the last few weeks, we have seen a scare and a fear of enormous proportions, not the scaremongering directed at the Scottish people, but the scare and the fear at the heart of the Westminster establishment as they realised the mass movement of people that was going forward in Scotland. And therefore, today of all days, as we bring Scotland together, let us not dwell on the distance we have fallen short. Let us dwell on the distance we have travelled and have confidence that the movement is abroad in Scotland that will take this nation forward, and we shall go forward as one nation. Thank you very much.
That's Alex Salmond from the Scottish National Party and First Minister of Scotland. We'll continue our conversation with our UK correspondent Natalie Powell, who's in Edinburgh, and we're chatting to her about the results so far. Well, there we have it, Natalie. Salmond has conceded defeat and has urged the rest of Scottish people to follow suit. But more importantly, he said it cannot be business as usual in politics going forward, because this campaign has touched many people who otherwise were not touched before by politics.
That's absolutely right. And leading up to this very vote, the polls were neck and neck, in fact. And the No campaign has only won by a fairly small majority, sort of 9 or 10% or so. There are a lot of people here who did want independence, who did want more sovereignty for Scotland. They've been out in the streets waving flags. There have been a number of cars driving past this very spot with yes banners in the window, flags flying high. So this was something very much that a lot of people in Scotland, almost half of them in fact, were very keen to have more independence. There were, however, a lot of people who were perhaps more keen for what they were calling Devo Max, maximum devolution, if you will. And somebody said to me, actually, that if that had been on the ballot paper, then it was very likely that that would have had an overall majority. Now, the leaders of the three Westminster parties obviously cottoned on to that a little bit late, though, and they've been promising more devolution, and that's now at the stage that we're at. And it does seem that a lot of Scots will be more satisfied with that, perhaps, than an alternative, particularly those who were voting yes. They'll be keen to be given much more power than none at all.
And of course, someone was also referred to that, saying that Scotland is expecting London to deal with the power devolution issues rapidly than before. Just as we were saying earlier, I just wanted to get a sense from you, Natalie, what kind of these powers that they expect to be devolved more to Scotland? Is it foreign policy things, defence issues, trade and industry issues? Are you able to share some of those with us?
Well, Scotland will be in charge more of its own taxes and welfare and funding. That's what's likely to happen. It's also likely to be given more control over funding, or complete control, I should say, over funding of the NHS, and it will share resources with the rest of the United Kingdom. So that's what it's looking at when we talk in terms of more devolution. Now, Scotland already has devolution to some extent with the Scottish Parliament just behind me here. They have power over things like education, law and order, but of course an independent Scotland would have given it an awful lot more, things like control over immigration, control over defence and control over foreign policy, which is what they were very keen to do. But there would have been a lot of concerns, of course, going forward in terms of currency. That was a big sticking issue, in fact, and a lot of uncertainty. And perhaps what we're seeing with this vote is that people are sticking with the known as opposed to the unknown. But as you've mentioned, it's going to be quite a rapid formation of this further devolution for Scotland. We're told that they are hoping, between Scotland and Westminster, they're hoping to have something together by around about November, draw up legal business by January, so a formal legislation to be published in January, and then that's likely to be enacted in March. The one problem with that, however, is there are a lot of issues to be discussed here. As you've heard, Alex Salmond very much pushing for a lot of devolution, a lot more power to Scotland, so it's likely that the politicians are going to have to really battle it out, and that obviously could cause some delays.
Very much. That's Natalie Powell, our correspondent in the UK, outside Parliament in Edinburgh, there, as we wrap that discussion. Yes, the no voters have won in Scotland, so Scotland remains part of the UK, but as the leader of the National Party said, that's Alex Salmond earlier, it's not going to be business as usual for politics in Scotland going forward.